Assalamualaikum. How are you? Fine. Glad to see you again. You're just 5 from Hartlepool.
Yes, sir.
Where are the rest?
This
one carload?
Yes.
One car.
Right.
Yeah.
Saida would have liked to come, but she's not up to travelling yet.
I know.
She's very disappointed that she couldn't be here.
Right. I shouldn't permit her to come at this stage of recovery. The recovery has to be stabilized first. Shouldn't take any more risk. But I understand she works daily in the household chores. She started doing them.
Yes. Yes.
And feeling fine? Better than before?
She's looking very
marvellous to
well.
what she was.
Yes.
Mashallah.
Oh yeah, she really is.
So shall we start with what you have in mind?
Yes, they have got some questions.
Achha, the Hartlepool group
Yes.
and Mr. Jones as well? Or he is just
Yeah, just as
an observer?
helping, yes.
Okay. Please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Have you introduced them?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Achha, I'm sorry. Here is Mr. Hamid, husband of Sajda Hamid. That is how we introduce him, because it was Sajda, his wife, who first started the campaign of spreading the message of Ahmadiyyat in Hartlepool. And this lady is a very brave and very consistent and persistent lady in her tasks. Whatever she undertakes, she goes through it to the completion. So at a stage she was rather disappointed with the results, wanted to return home, back to Pakistan, I mean. And I told her no. I said, once you have started this, wait a bit more. And I will not permit you to return to Pakistan until you have produced a solid Jamaat to represent you here, and you can go back, return satisfied that I have left some people behind to carry the flag. So she said, yes, I take the challenge. And with the grace of Allah, when such a Jamaat came into being, she would not go back. She said, this is my home now. I can't leave these people. It's impossible. So that is how she started the work. And Hamid has been a very, very good husband to her in this regard. Like some wives are good to their husbands, that sort of thing. He always cooperated in everything good until he himself started preaching and also delivering the sermons. Is that right?
Yes.
So he's the president of the Jamaat, and 4 of the members of the Hartlepool Jamaat. There is one Jamaat in whole of England and Ireland, Scotland inclusive, which has majority of the British Ahmadis. The main core is the British Ahmadis. In other Jamaats, generally it's Pakistani majority with a few British Ahmadis, but this is one thing which is different. So today, 4 of the members of the Jamaat, the British members of the Jamaat have come, and of course the president of the Jamaat, Dr. Hamid. Shall we start with the questions now?
Yes, sir. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 30 to 31, it states, "At that time the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of the heavens to the other." And the question, do these verses pertain to the advent of Ahmadiyyat being broadcast via the satellite system?
I think it is related primarily to the sun and moon eclipse at the time of the second advent of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And also, it so happens that God had so organized the year of the centenary to fall in the same year as our international broadcast, television network reached its completion. And it was this year, for the first time, that this became a regular service for all days of a week, and this service is being transmitted to all the continents of the world. Now, of course, there are some areas where we are uh, not fully happy with the present position. For instance, there are areas where in South America, for instance, where we cannot reach except on Friday sermons, and North America, Canada, which are only linked so far with Friday sermons and occasional programs of jalsas, Eids, etc., etc. Now we are undertaking a project by which, inshallah, very soon, and again in this year, the same year, we will be able to reach them daily like in Europe. And so 3 hours daily, we will have a program for North, South America and Canada, and at the same time, Africa will be fully covered. So then we can say with certainty that all the world is now receiving the signals from Ahmadiyyat, and inshallah, this prophecy will be realized in letter and spirit. This is what I think. It's not just one prophecy, it's two prophecies in one. The year is coinciding these two great events. And that also indicates, all the messages are sent up to the heaven and they are reflected from there down. So in a way, everybody feels as if suddenly these programs have appeared from the heaven. And this feeling has never been witnessed by any other viewer in the world except Ahmadis. It's fascinating. Of course, the same phenomenon is applicable to all programs, whether they are national or international. But in this case, all over the world, Ahmadis have the same feeling. Something's appearing from the heaven. And they write without consulting each other. I mean, from Africa, from Japan, from anywhere else. Small villages in Bangladesh, they write to me and express it the same way, like it is said in the prophecy. This shows how Jesus was meant to appear in the world from heaven. Yes, please.
The West is not doing enough to stop the war in Bosnia, and the events of this last week has shown how inept the UN forces are. I would like to know why you think that Muslim countries have not spoken out more and don't seem to be helping the Bosnian Muslims.
I think the simple answer to this question is very tragic, but unfortunately, that is the only answer I can offer. The Muslim countries are not spokesmen of Islam. They are spokesmen of those powers which control them, which rule them. And many countries have practically become spokesmen of America, for instance. There are some others who would be spokesmen of France or Britain or Europe in general. But largely, I think it is America which is dictating terms to the Muslim world. So I don't mean they don't feel for Bosnians. Of course they do feel. When we sent messages to certain of the Muslim leaders, and I once launched a campaign that Ahmadis in large numbers from all over the world should continue writing letters to the leadership in Islam, Muslim world, and coaxing them on to do something, just teasing them out of this lethargy. And the responses which we received in some cases were very, very encouraging. It shows that they do feel the misery and they do share this torture of the Bosnian, but no more, just a feeling. So it means despite the fact that they don't like what's happening in Bosnia, they are helpless, they're powerless, they're speechless. Because the speech is controlled from somewhere else, As I have been saying, the microphones are in Washington, but the loudspeakers are in these countries. That's the unfortunate situation. But I think quietly diplomatically all these Muslim countries, I'm quite sure, I mean, it's irrelevant whether Ahmadis or not, but I know the world of Islam feels at one, in feeling at least, whenever such tragedies happen. So they all share this with us. Only they're not free to act as we are free to act. So but privately, they must be speaking of their mind. They must have been expressing their disgruntlement at what's happening during their diplomatic negotiations with the Western countries. So this plus that propaganda campaign which we have launched, and more so the prayers which we are constantly making, and I never miss, and the Jamaat also is being reminded by me to constantly remember in prayer the Bosnian Muslim unfortunate people. I mean, the words fail me to describe the state of misery in which they find them. And I think these factors, with the grace of Allah, with the response to our prayers from Allah, are creating some results. Previously, for many years, they continued to threaten the Bosnians only with words. No, the Serbs only with words. Never anything followed. So it was so tantalizing. So I can't explain how one felt, totally helpless. They went on week after week and month after month, threatening the Serbs. That is the last. No more. We're going to strike. Remember this. This is serious. Resolution after resolution was passed in the United Nations, or statements were issued by Americans and the European leadership. Nothing followed. But for the first time now, things are happening. Though not enough, but for instance, today they have given a challenge. Europeans unitedly have given a challenge to the Serbians to immediately vacate that township which has now been surrounded, and a large number of Muslim populace has been slaughtered there. They have been now given a notice that if by noon today they do not vacate the whole town and go back to their not earlier positions but 2 miles away from the town limits, they would carry out a large, heavy bombardment expedition, or let's say they will be bombarded by air. This time, in a much different sense, in a much bigger sense, because they have planned that all European states would participate in this large-scale bombing, and they have made it clear that it would be search and destroy mission by our aeroplanes, and wherever we find any single Serbian presence or collective Serbian presence, we are going to bombard that. Now, the ultimate goes on: if you do not retreat to 2 miles away from the town limits, then the bombardment which would take place would be in 12-mile zone. It will not be in 2-mile zone. They have accepted, at least in words like they have been doing it. They say, all right, we are retreating. But in the past what happened? They always, amassed more forces, if not here, in some other place, and drew the attention of the world to another place of atrocities. And in the meantime, when this ultimatum was supposed to have been gone overboard, being too old, they would restart the same atrocities here. That is the unfortunate situation.
Do you think, Hazur, that it could be the plight of the Muslims isn't being helped by the vision that the media in Europe sees of Islam as portrayed in the Middle East?
Correct. You are absolutely right.
And therefore,
I fully agree.
Europe fears the unknown, and Therefore, they don't really want a Islamic state
Yes,
within
this is
Europe.
exactly what I have been telling the Bosnian leadership throughout and others, even the European leadership, that this phantom of Muslim presence in Europe turning into a terrorist country or seat of terrorism offered by a European Muslim country to those who are interested in terrorism. I said this is just a fear. It has no foundation, no ground. These people who are Muslims in name, very few among them really know about Islam. But they are faithful to Islam only in their respect of Islam and values, no more. If they continue to misbehave towards them or permit the Serbs to continue to show their aggression against them, then of course they'll be pushed to Islam and maybe ultimately Islam of terrorism, not the true Islam. Now, I received a few days ago a letter from a very important Bosnian Muslim in some other country. He practically holds the ambassadorial powers, and that is the role he's performing there. He once saw with some Ahmadis the video recording of my meeting with Bosnians in Sweden. He writes to me that he was so profoundly impressed that he has decided to become an Ahmadi. And he says that I know there's nobody can change this after saying that you are the one people who do have a very deep, very sincere regard for the misery of Bosnian Muslims. Now there, the threatening line, to which I have responded and tried to make him understand and never to forget this message, that at times I'm so fed up that I feel like giving in to the temptation of terrorism in the West. And I feel like accepting the hand of those who extend this hand of aid and finances and this and that. But he says, I'm resisting it. So I told him, being an Ahmadi, it would be impossible for you to ever even dream of such a course of action. And which again is suicidal for you. It will not reap you any benefit whatsoever. Your redemption lies only in one thing. Outside Islam and prayer, as far as the world relationship is concerned, I wrote to him that your redemption lies only in one thing, and remember this, that you should create an image, such a wonderful image of your humanitarian values, of your kindness, of your will to serve the cause of others, even in misery. You offer yourself for such tasks as are related to all philanthropist organizations, telling them you have time for this, you can do this and that. That this would create an image, a counter image in the minds of the Western leadership, that look here, what were we afraid of? They're very different people, a people who in such misery and after having been, treated so ill at the hands of all around them, are yet guarding their human values. No danger from such people can ever ensue to anyone. This is the message of your life, and stick to it. This is the exact message which I also gave to some leaders in France when they came to meet me, and some of them were also rather at the verge of breakdown. I said, for God's sake, create an image of the Bosnian which is loved by the people around, and turn the fear of hatred on your part, this is what they fear, into a positive impression of your kindness and benign attitude and love for others and service to mankind. Then you will be able to really regain what you have lost. In Holland, I made this proposal in a more, real form. I mean, not in just as a device, but I exactly told them what to do. I suggested that you offer your services to the government, tell them we are here on just living on your kindness, but as honorable people we don't like this. We want to return in the same good coins the kindness and favors you have shown us. So there are so many people here who need help, and so many areas where we can be useful. We have so many professionals, doctors, nurses, carpenters, this and that. We offer our services free of cost for anything good to which you could put that service. And this, I told them, was going to create the impact which they need, and it will boost also their honor and sense of self-respect. The response was so wonderful. They all with one accord said, now this is light. There is something which has made us happy. Previously, they were feeling as if they were beggars. And there were very honorable people among them, mostly very highly educated. Not mostly, but a large number is highly educated. So they responded well, and this is my advice to all Bosnians who are listening to this program, that they should offer themselves as benefactors of mankind. And inshallah, that will turn the key. Okay? Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Well, you've answered some of my question. It's about Bosnia, but I'd like to know why has it took NATO 2 years to decide finally, after they've killed all these thousands of people, and they're so powerful, why couldn't they do this before?
Before, what do you mean?
When it first started, why let it go on for 2 years?
You see, what they were hoping, privately, was that it would not go on for that long.
No.
They thought the Bosnian resistance would be finished off in a matter of weeks, if not weeks and months. Because on the one hand, there was a poor people who were already, speaking in terms of defense, were incapable of fighting a much bigger army, which was much better equipped in all sorts of weaponry and aeroplanes and guns, etc., and with all the logistic cover they had to their advantage. So they thought there was no hope for them. They could not survive. And again, they were disarmed. That is the greatest tragedy.
Mm.
The most evil tragedy that human history has witnessed. This is United Nations. They decided to help the Bosnians by suggesting and by implementing their decision that no arms should be permitted to reach Bosnia for their self-defense. The rifles, the mere rifles which they had, were without bullets.
Yeah.
And yet they survived. Now, their own experts writing on these things have expressed their total amazement at how could they survive for that long. Now, this survival against their expectations and hopes is what is turning their opinion to different channels now. In the meantime, things happened on the Russian salient, which also made them worried. Because previously, it was Russia which was openly helping the Serbs against Bosnians and also against Croatians, and they helped slyly, quietly the Croatians, of course, but not the Bosnians. From Croatia, they didn't have such fear of the unknown as you just put it, but from Bosnians they had. So Germany kept on helping Croatia build their defense industry. And now they are much more powerful than 2 years before. But Bosnia was left without any help, without any arms, and even without food. Yet it survived. In the meantime, as I've said, things have changed on the Russian salient, and there Russia is no longer as safe to them as it appeared to be in the first, hobnobbing with them, which took place after the fall of Berlin Wall, etc., etc. That phase of honeymoon is over, it seems, and now they're suspecting some hardcore Russian leadership to emerge suddenly and take over. In that case, they don't want to lose the small pocket of Bosnia, which they could use to their advantage, because if that pocket is also wiped out, then it will be entire Yugoslavia under Russian sway, and which would create some trouble and disturbances, of course. So I personally feel that this dragging out and apparently slow death process has ultimately given way to a hope for revival. And it comes not from perhaps pressure from the Muslim countries, because the pressure went on even before that, the quiet pressure I mean. But perhaps more it is because of the political changes in Russia and threatening changes as they begin to see them. Allah knows, let's see
Let's hope it will
what
be
happens in the
right,
next few
anyway.
days. Yes. But we must continue praying for them
Oh, yeah.
regularly with deep sense of sharing their misery and making it our own. Only then prayers can rise in a way that they are acceptable to Allah. Next, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Fine?
He's got
My voice is a bit croaky, so you'll have to
Yes.
bear with me.
And how's the family?
Oh, very well.
Very good.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
Thanks very much. Well, when I visited Rabwa, I had a
When?
chance in Pakistan about 2.5 years ago.
That's right. Yes.
I had a chance meeting with a local Christian priest.
Is that right? You
Yeah.
didn't tell me that before. Very interesting. Yes.
He said, "Oh, you're obviously Christian." I said, "No, I'm Ahmadi," and he was very, very surprised. And we discussed Christ's relationship to God. And he said, "Why don't you believe that that Christ was the Son of God?" He said, "God's so powerful." He said, "If he'd have wanted a son,
Why
then
not?
he can have one." And I
That's the
would,
simple logic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would like to hear the way you would have answered him.
I would like to hear the way you answered him.
Actually, I can't remember what I said to him.
You see, I have already completed a book on this issue and many more similar issues, where I think for the first time that a book addressed to Christianity is written entirely from the logical point of view, and without having dependence on any biblical or Quranic references, although I have given some references only to introduce an idea, but not by way of dependence on them. Whether they are there or not there is irrelevant to the point of logic. So I have based this discussion entirely on logic. And this question also comes up. It's there. God could make a child if he so wanted, but how? This modus operandi is the main thing of discussion, not just the power of God. Why would he want one? That is one thing. If he wanted one, would he create his son from the, appearing from the uterus of a human mother? And what would be the relationship of that God to that woman, if he so decides? The Christians say, we say, all right, let us accept. God so decided. But what would be that woman to God, whose child she is bearing? And if she is a legally wed wife, then of course one would see that relationship to have acquired a sense of decency. But if it is not that, then one is very, very doubtful as to what was happening. And then the son would be, of course, a legitimate son of God if they become husband and wife. But then there should be a divorce before she marries again to Joseph. And if there is no such divorce, then as the Christians are laughing at Islam having permission of 4 wives, why should we not laugh back at them of accusing them of bigamy? Now, biandry. Bigamy is having 2 wives, but biandry means having 2 husbands. So where is the proof that God divorced Mary before she got married to Joseph? There is no such thing. So, I mean, if you must turn to logic and possibilities, we will have to accept, of course, God can do anything. But can God do such absurd things as these? This is the issue. It's not that God has a limitation to his powers and his implementation of his will. We accept. But we accept that there is another limitation imposed by him himself as bearing out of, rooted in his absolute wisdom. If he is absolutely wise, which these Christians must agree and admit, then no unwise act can be attributed to him. And when an act is attributed to him in the name of his being all-powerful, the only thing to be seen by human beings is, of course he is all-powerful, he can do it, but is it wise enough of him to do it? So on that front, they will be beaten totally hollow. On this issue, as I have discussed it in my recent, not recent book, but about to be published book, inshallah we will see answers to all such questions. Then if you have got this, you can write back to him and you can even send him this book and invite him to answer that, if you please. Right?
You have
Yeah.
to go over and see him.
Thank you very much.
You go first, have to go and see him.
So, next.
In the Bible and the Holy Quran, I've read so much about Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Yes.
Has any research been done into the similarities, if there are any, between Mary, mother of Jesus, and the mother of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him?
No. No such research has been done, nor we ever thought it to be relevant to the issue. Because Mary is referred to as a symbolic lady of perfection in chastity, whereby she is told by the Quran to have given birth to a child without having any relationship with the human being or without having any reference to her own personal desire to meet man, woman, all that's related to sex, etc., etc. It was totally irrelevant to Mary, and yet a child was born entirely under the influence of Allah's will. So the future promised Messiah is not related to any other mother. He is related to the same Mary, which means something of that nature should happen to the making of Christ in him. So that is why he never said that my mother was that chaste and my mother was like this and she had any similarity to Mary. What she said was that according to the Holy Quran, all believers, true believers, are either similar to the wife of Pharaoh or they are similar to Mary. No man is mentioned in this, likeness, in this relationship of believers in Rasulullah with any other holy personage. There's so many prophets. Why didn't Allah say they're like Moses, like Abraham, like no? All believers are likened unto either wife of Pharaoh or the wife or mother of Jesus Christ. And then in that same place, the Holy Quran says, the one who guarded her chastity, and Allah breathed into him, not into her. Breathed into him, and lo, Jesus was born. Now, this is a very interesting deviation from the normal expectation, because in another place the Holy Quran says regarding the birth of first Jesus that God breathed into her, and so Jesus was born. This time it was a male mother, as if, because God is referring to the breath into Jesus, referring to him as a male who is the recipient of that breath. But mother is not mentioned as her. The obvious reason is because the simile of all Muslim males are, similarity of all Muslim males is mentioned to that of Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. So Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, in view of this Quranic injunction, discussed this matter, which has become the laughing stock of the mullahs because they don't understand these things. Only a few days ago, I took up some of the objections and their joking and mocking at Masih Maud Islam, because he says, spiritually, I passed through a phase which was similar to Mary. And it was that Mary from which that Jesus is born, who is the Masih, the promised Messiah. So within me was that spiritual birth taking place. Now, the blind laugh at this and joke at it because they don't understand that the Quran says exactly the same thing. Yes.
Do you think, Hazur, that it could be, well, you was mentioning about the breath
Yes.
was passed into her, Hazrat Mary,
Yes.
that Hazrat Isa, alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was born as a prophet and he knew it. Even at the young age, he preached.
I'll come to that a bit later. Just a minute.
Right.
But let me finish. This is a very important question which is raised. Hazrat Masih Maud salam, like all believers, are likened to Mary or the wife of Pharaoh. I leave that out for a while. Let me return to the question of how believers are to be like Mary. They can only be like Mary if they do not permit their own personal ambitions to gain greater heights in the nearness of Allah, to play any role. Their personal ambitions should be totally divorced from their desire to rise spiritually. If that is chastity in spiritual terms. If a person believes himself to be a holy man, if he desires to be to gain a status in the sight of the world, then it is not a chastity at all. It is something born of his deeper inner, what they say, worldly or materialistic desire to display his grandeur and to become great in the sight of the people of the earth. So it's mundane in character, it's not spiritual. Now, in case of true believers, they do not want to grow in the sight of people. They only disappear and grow in the sight of God. So anyone who is born out of that state is likened to Jesus. They, in that case, become Mary, who gave birth to a Jesus. So every true believer should give birth to a sort of Jesus, small or big, but he must go through that phase of inner sacrifice, of killing his own personal desires, only having God in mind. And then God promises, you have not demanded anything, we like this. And this state of affair is bound to give birth to a greater spiritual being from within you. So it was only in this manner that Masih Maud discussed it. So that is why his mother is irrelevant to this. His human mother is irrelevant to issue. According to the Quran, the future Jesus would be born. The one which is promised, of course, would be the Jesus. But even in case of other Muslims who are truly genuine to the cause of Islam, who are truly dedicated to Allah and the Holy Prophet, they also give birth to a higher man within them. And this has been fully witnessed and supported by the great Muslim scholars and ulama who were divine scholars and ulama in the past. So I quoted amply, extensively from them to those mullahs. I said, look at, this is what they have said. They've gone through the same experience and they have described it even more apparently materially to bring the likeness. Said, we have this, we had this feeling, and then we were born out of ourselves, a new birth. That is khalq-e akhir. So these people, the worldly people, they laugh at it and like Jesus was laughed at, and they don't understand the deeper implications of these things. Now that's your question, please.
Well, you mentioned about the breath
Yes.
being passed into Hazrat Mary. Now, Hazrat Isa, alayhi salatu wasalam, he was born knowing that he was a prophet. He spoke from the cradle.
But that is slightly different from what we find historically. The fact is that a child may have seen some dreams with reference to which he may speak innocently of things which he doesn't understand, like Joseph did. But he was not made a prophet there and then. Only it was a promise of his future rise to the prophethood, which was contained in that dream. But he did not understand, nor did his brothers. But they were just vaguely jealous of something happening to this boy, and they started opposing him. In case of Jesus, whatever he said was misread by the people who accused Mary of unchastity, lack of chastity, because they thought it is Mary who has made it up.
Yes.
It is Mary who is feeding this child with this thought rubbish, so that he stands between her and her accusers with relation to some inner experiences which he speaks of, telling him to be not only an ordinary boy, but a very special boy, the one to whom God speaks. So they thought this was the way to fend off the unwanted criticism and to save the embarrassment by Mary. So they did not take it seriously. Nowhere. They just dismissed it. What do you mean? Should we talk to this boy in the cradle? Now, it also explains why it was not really cradle that they were referring to. When an old man is addressed by a small child, when he attempts to rectify something he said, he always looked down and said, you belong to the cradle. Don't talk to me. Who are you, small kid, born yesterday, that sort of thing. So we understand this reference exactly in the same sense. We believe, and I believe personally, I have not read it anywhere else, but I believe personally, I have also spoken on this, written on this, that Jesus Christ must have received some wonderful dreams from Allah, like Joseph. And he started innocently, while he was a very young child, innocently of those experiences. And Mary, when she was accused, she asked them to speak to that child and listen to him. What she meant was that if she were unchaste, would she give birth to such a holy child?
That's right, yes.
So that is the significance of all this.
Yes. The breath where you mentioned of the second advent,
Yes.
that
Of
was
every
into him.
no,
but
it is not that Jesus which is referred to. That is a reference to every Jesus who would be born in future from among the Muslim believers.
I see, yes, yes.
See, that is why I say a different style is adopted. In the case of Jesus' birth, it is said that God breathed into Mary, who was the
Yes.
chaste lady. So she had the right to receive such favors from Allah, and she gave birth to a child. But in case where Muslim believers are likened unto Mary, there this expression is not repeated.
No.
It is that God sent his breath, breathed into him.
Yes.
So from that you can refer to Jesus, but more likely, I believe, this is my personal inclination, it is the believer who was like Mary who is referred to.
I see. Yes.
Because in this case he happens to be a man, so the reference is to a man. Instead of her, God says, God breathed into him.
Yes, I follow it now.
You see?
Yes, thank you.
It's a fascinating difference. That shows the Quran and how this is a divine book,
Yes.
Doesn't make the smallest misstep. While people don't understand what it's talking about, why this variance of style, but when you begin to understand in depth, then you know this must be the word of God. Right?
Thank you.
Next, please.
Could I ask, please, during transmissions, when verses of the Holy Quran or sometimes your poetry are being recited, would it be possible to have an English transliteration printed on the screen?
That is a very good idea. Very good idea. But now what we are trying to do is that certain very interesting programs in the past are going to be reorganized properly, and also my sermons and my addresses and the poems which are read during the period of my address like this, getting together for 1 hour or so, into not only to be translated not only into English, but also into Bosnian, in French, in German, in Arabic, in Turkish, and some other languages, so that we fully utilize the 8 channels available to us. So the advantage of that would be that this time English would be properly translated. I mean, the things would be properly translated into English. Sometimes when I receive translations of my poems, for instance, from those who paid, proper attention to it, who sat down for hours making translation, I'm horrified at the message which was delivered to them. Really horrified. I say, God, this is what they understood from our poetry. Is that the image they would put across to the others? And I say, for God's sake, stop it. No more. Everyone can't understand poetry. Much less can one understand the Quran in its true spirit everywhere. It has 2 messages. One on the surface, that's all right. But it has much deeper references too. And even on the surface, people differ in their meaning because the possibilities of this translation or that, there's so many. The Arab language is so rich. One word offers about the possibility of translating it in 12 ways, 13, 14, even 50 ways. So that is why it's very essential that this running translation should be followed by a good, correct translation. I don't know what you have been receiving from me through translation. I know this lady is very good.
Yes.
She is, yes, very
She
good.
speaks good English. But I'm not sure whether she understands me every time correctly, and which she privately admits to me many a time.
It appears to make sense what
Yes.
you're saying.
But
So-
that is the good point. She always attributes sense to me. But does she always attribute to me that sense which I expressed or some other sense? That is questionable. And at times I have been told that she could not do it, and she admitted it, and she gave me a very good reason for that. She said, when I'm translating, at that time my concentration is on translation and not on that which you are saying during that period of my translating something which I understood and started translating. So during that period, some dark phases appear, where my mind is turned to the translation more than what you say. When I have said that, then I have to say something about that missing link, and also to listen to what you are saying for the next translation. So she is a very intelligent lady. She is well read in Ahmadiyyat. So what she does is this, that she creates the links herself. Maybe I also might have done the same thing. I don't know, but she creates the sensible links between what she said and what she was about to say, so that in between dark area is bridged by what she conceives might have been said by me. This is how the translation is being made. And then that translation is made simultaneously in Bosnian, in French, in other languages. And what would happen to the second generation or third generation of translations? So similarly, the Arabic is excellent. The Arabic of Mr. Abdul Momin is excellent. Those who know Arabic, they tell me he translates well. But at the same time, when I inquire from some of them searchingly, tell me straightforwardly, honestly, are you fully satisfied? I said, no, most certainly not. They say, ask him how difficult it is. They repeated exactly the same thing. They said, at places, when he tries to fill in the blanks, he appears to be blank himself.
Yes.
He's not as fast in imagining as this lady is. And so sometimes he tells me, if he's so confused that he tries to run over to the second passage without creating the bridge in between. So this is a translation, very important thing, because in future people are going to refer to these speeches, addresses, etc., and my answers. And if I'm wrongly understood, then I'll feel very uneasy wherever I am after death with Allah. That's good in my name what is being spread and said. So we have already planned to undertake literal translations and of course idiomatic translations of all these sermons and major addresses and this 1 hour of getting together, and this will start being displayed within 2 months maybe, I hope so. Sayyid Isal Sahab? Inshallah. The whole world is working on it, and inshallah, then you will really understand me correctly. Maybe not entirely even then. Okay?
That would be my fault if I don't.
No. Thank you very much. Yes. Next, please. Is it your question, I think? You have said?
Yes.
Yes, it's Tariq.
So, recently, scientists and astronomers have decided that space is finite. I wonder if you'd like to comment on it.
Space is finite.
Yes.
What they mean is the space known to them appears to be finite. But the debate is still an ongoing debate, and the main issue which is now bothering or agitating the minds of scientists is whether it is an open universe or a shut universe. So nothing is finally decided. The data available to them is so meager that it is impossible for them to reach a positive conclusion. So whatever they publish of their finding or inclinations should not be taken as word of God, not even as a word of a scientist who has reached a place where he can say with certainty, this is final. No such thing. The debate is about open or shut universe. By open universe, they mean that the whole universe is expanding. Will it continue to expand on and on until a time comes where it can never be retracted back, like the formation of black holes? things were expanding and going, falling apart and uh, distancing themselves among themselves more and more. This is expanding universe. But we see in the formation of a black hole that at one stage the inner forces which attract get the upper hand, and the stars, etc., passing closer to some very powerful stars, they get attracted towards them, and accretion from the space goes on falling on a powerfully charged, gravitated unit with immense power of gravity. A black hole is created, the universe disappears. So they say if the expansion goes beyond the limits to a stage where no inner attraction or gravitational pull can bring the universe back together, then this is an open universe. If it does not happen like that, then maybe creation of black holes here and there begin to attract more stars towards them until it becomes so big and so huge, so powerful, that its attractive force reaches out the very ultimate limits of the universe, and it begins to pull back those receding and escaping stars which are at the periphery of the universe. Then that would be a shut universe. Some believe in the first scenario, some in the second scenario. As far as the Quran is concerned, it says it is a shut case, open and shut case, not an open case. The Holy Quran says, we who have created the universe, a time would come when we wrap it round like the wrapping round of a scroll, round our hand, as the wrapping round of a scroll, and everything would come to an end. Nothing will be left except God. Then the Holy Quran says, Kama badana awwala khalqin nuridu. And as we created you in the first time, we will repeat this process once again. And something would happen that large, immense black hole, which would have engulfed everything and eaten it up, and as if there were no existence anymore, that would be ripped open once again. Another big bang would take place. So according to the Quran, this is the true scenario, and there is no shadow of doubt that this is going to be proved right, because this scenario was presented at a time when no human being on earth could even conceive of what universe was, or how it looked like, and the phenomenon responsible for creation, etc., and other phenomena related to this. No such idea existed at the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and particularly in Arabia, which is the seat of ignorance. There was some light in the neighboring country, Iran. Persian Empire was big. Some light in Rome, and Roman Empire was quite big. But this was a spot where all darkness collected, and this was a country which is referred to as country of ignorant people. Even in the light of their achievements in Rome and in Persia, there was no such conceivable thing as what I'm talking about. And the Holy Quran is so clear about it. Right?
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could I just ask, going on from that, in the Bible it says that God's house has many mansions.
What?
In the Bible it says that God's house has, many rooms. Yes. Does this refer to spiritual or temporal rooms?
You see, we believe that the divine word always has the same character and same style. So if you read, for instance, Genesis, it can only have meaning if you translate it as we do in the light of the Quran. Otherwise, it will be total, just a meaningless fiction, no more. But the Holy Quran speaks of the issues with such clarity that although symbols are used, but it throws light on the issue of there being symbols, so that we must not take them literally. Like in the Bible, it is said 6 days you consumed by Allah for creation, and the seventh day was the rest day. The Holy Quran also speaks of the same, but with one exception. The days are not described in relation to sun rising and sun setting.
Yes.
While in the Bible, they are described in relation to sun rising. The creation was there was no creation, it was all chaos. And yet, sun rose and sun set. So it's obviously this is not acceptable. But the Holy Quran never speaks of any such phenomenon which relates to everyday experience of human beings. Secondly, the Holy Quran speaks of days as much larger than we think. In one place, one day is described as of the duration of 1,000 years. At another place, it is described as the duration of 5,000 years. At another place, it is described as of the duration of 10,000 years, 50,000 years. But there is far more to it than this. This book is absolutely fascinating, unbelievably fascinating, because as you study it in depth, then you begin to realize new doors opening into new universes. Here, the style of this is describing days being different in duration is also very important. In the first case, where it says 1,000 years of God are like one year of God is 1 day. One day of God is like 1,000 years of human being. Yours, the way you reckon. So once you multiply the days of human reckoning to 1,000, then each day of every 1,000 years of God would be of that duration. Because in the second instance and the third instance, Allah does not speak of as you reckon. Then it's only God's reckoning. So once I multiplied this, applying the same formula to 50,000 years, you know what it worked out to be? Amazingly, it worked out to be very close to the age of universe as they speak of. It was more than 18 billion years, one day of God, you know. So that's unbelievable. But when you calculate, then this is how it appears. So that is how the Quranic message should be understood, and in the light of this we translate and interpret Bible. Otherwise there will be no meaning left to it. Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Now I think this time, they tell me, is already, finished, consumed our time and started to consume other people's time. Eh? So thank you very much for coming. I'm very happy to have met you. Very interesting discussions took place, and I hope you return home satisfied. And convey my regards and love to all the Jamaat. It's a very, very, a Jamaat which is very dear to me. You know all that, don't you? And Sajda, of course, and your children. Eh? Assalamu alaikum.